Hey ho, everybody. Hey gang, as Ted would say. Sorry about that. I hate being late. I have a deep hatred of being late, and everything's been fine. But I got a new holder thing. Let me turn off the audio on the iPad, rather. Got a new holder thing for my MacBook, clamshell mode. I plugged it in, went to get a cup of coffee, and didn't realize that one of the USB cables I apparently connected upside down. And through the same USB hub, my sound card was working fine, but the internet, for whatever reason, was very picky about the orientation of that USB-C connector, and it was gone. And so I was like, oh, shit, what's going on? Anyway, how does it sound to everyone? This is a new setup, as you can tell, and I want to make sure that it sounds good on your end. Cool. All right, so I have one question for you, and then we're going to get into your questions. I'll go up to the top and start from the top, and I see some donations have come in. Thank you very much. I'll make sure to get to your questions, but I also want to repeat to everyone that you do not have to bribe me to get your questions answered. I will answer them as I have time, regardless of donations. Anyway, real quick, let's go here. So I've got a filter here which reduces the noise in the room. The primary sources of noise are the air conditioner, without which I will die, and the lovely looking scope there has a fan. So I'm going to turn the noise suppression off, and then I'm going to talk for a little bit, then I'm going to turn it back on. You tell me which sounds better on your end. So this is with the noise suppression, without the noise suppression, so you should be hearing some rumble and some fan noise from the lovely, lovely scope, and then back with the noise suppression. I see you there, Dustin. So how does that sound as far as the noise suppression goes on your end? Well, that's groovy. One less thing. Let me turn off the noise suppression. I'm close to the mic, as you can tell. So that's good to know. The trouble is, if I monitor what's coming out of OBS, I have 120 milliseconds lag. So I'm hearing myself twice. It's like having a really nasty slapback. And I find myself speaking weirdly because I'm reacting to a weird thing in my cans. I'm only wearing the cans because that reminds me to stay here on the mic. Otherwise, I'll get lazy and go back here. So anywho, let me adjust my level a little bit. I bumped the level when I was touching things. That's where I want to be. All right. Much, much better. Let me go to the top of the chat and start getting to questions now. Thanks for bearing with me. Again, I loathe lateness in myself more than on others. Rogue One asked, hey, please discuss or feature a 64 custom Deluxe Reverb hand-wired, hoping you have a solution to my very noisy reverb channel. Well, I will feature one when one comes in. I don't get amps for the channel, not very commonly. Sometimes I'll see one at a buddy's shop or whatever and ask if I can take it in. But when someone brings in a hand-wired 64, I will discuss it. I get asked that question again and again and again, and it is overpriced marketing junk. It is absolutely no better built than the standard 65 reissue. It has no magic, and the blue caps are just blue plastic molded over cheap caps. Has the same issues with other components that the 65 does, Its eyelet board, its turret board is really a PCB, and not a very well laid out one. It's got an excess of wire. It has the Princeton Reverb tremolo circuit, vibrato circuit, not the Deluxe Reverb, because they didn't want to deal with using the I don't know if it's Mercury or whatever's in the LDR and the old Roach, but they can't sell it in the EU. So rather than saying, hey, we can't sell this in the EU, they put a real basic bias trim in their Deluxe Reverb. And it sounds fine, but it doesn't sound like a Deluxe Reverb. So you're paying an awful lot for not much. I mean, the cab's better. That's it. And you could get any 65 reissue and then get a Mojotone cab for like $300 for less than the price of the hand-wired. Whose hands? I keep looking at myself instead of looking at you guys. I need to fix that. I need to stop touching my face. I need to stop doing wild hand gestures because I don't want to be that kind of YouTube channel. I'll go to wide angle if I want to do that. And I got to remember to look at you guys instead of at my lovely, well, my face. Anyway, I don't. Clyde Broadway says hello, Lyle. Hello, Clyde. Do you have any solid state amps you like, or is just the old Roland JC40 or nothing? Well, I don't like the JC series at all. They were great, groundbreaking in 1978, but they're noisy. They have no headroom, and they have one sound. I would take a Katana over that, because the Katana will do the JC sound, and then about 30 other sounds, and they're quieter as far as self-noise. And you actually get usable overdrive if you want. So, yeah, there are good solid states, but solid state amps, say like an old Pierce. The good solid state amps, the really good solid state amps, were made with power transistors, which are vanishing today. It's very hard to find them. It gets expensive, and, there's a reason the entire world is going to digital modeling. So if you want the convenience of solid state, if you're playing bass, get an Aguilar 500 series. I don't remember the model number. It's a little 4-pound thing, 300 or 500 watts. It's about $600-700. Sounds great. When the Class D power section dies, you get another one. If you're, want a guitar amp, get a Kemper, get a Axifex if you have the dough for it, or just get a pod, whatever the HG Stomp or whatever it's called, and then some basic solid state amp where you can hear yourself. Pick up a used solid state amp with an effects return and plug that into there. You hear yourself on stage, but you send the actual process sound to front of house. I'm not a tube snob. It's just that, if someone were to have an Axifex 3 and bring it to me for repair, I'd say, I'm sorry, I'm not a computer repairman anymore. I used to be. I would say, take it back to Fractal. So it'd be a very boring video for you guys. So what I fix is the old stuff. This morning over my first of many, many cups of coffee, I watched 5-Watt Worlds, Keith's very excellent History of the 58 Bassman, or History of the Bassman. And, it reinforced to me not just how great that Bassman is. Starting with about 56, they started to get really good, and then 58 through 60, 61, just the bedrock of what a great amp is. And Marshall and Vox took big chunks of that design. So most people's iconic desert island amps, I hope you have electricity on that island, are derived from that circuit to large degrees. But it's not just that it came out of the blue, it's that it was so much better than all the competition. Everything that Gibson, Valco, Ampeg, everyone was doing in the 50s was still kind of like designed for 1940s stuff, where you're kind of just playing a little bit of stuff and you'd be as loud as a brass section. The Bassman, and this goes for the other Tweeds starting in 57 and Fender, were just so much better sounding, better longevity, better built, better serviceability than any of the competition. And that's one of the reasons it makes me very sad to see the 64 hand-wired Deluxe Reverbs, which get talked about very highly on a lot of channels that know an awful lot about playing guitar or pedals or et cetera, but they don't know what's inside the amp. and it maketh me sad. But and then you see the tone masters, and they're what Fender's doing is they're saying, well, yeah, the deluxe reverb reissue is great, the super reverb reissue is great, but man, it's getting tubes and ensuring a supply of tubes, that's a big uncertainty in our business model. So they're going to see more and more tone master kind of things. But at the same time, they realize that people want the old stuff. So they'll do a hand-wired version. Ooh, 64. That's not actually anything like a 64 Deluxe Reverb, but people will pay for it. David Marr asks, is anyone here yet that might be willing to field an amplifier question prior to start? Brad's on here. Good day, Brad. Thank you for waking up so early. Anything I can do, he can do, Rooter. So yeah, he's a great resource here. Andrew Waltz, thank you very much, says, hey Lyle, why do I see some restored Fender amps having their power transformer center tap disconnected for virtual ones? Is one better for noise than the other? Well, it's not going to be an HT center tap disconnected unless they that would be very rare in any restored Fender, unless someone went from tube rectification to a full bridge. But I think what you're probably referring to is lifting the heater center tap, which is better for two reasons. First of all, when you wind a transformer, and so here's all the winds on one primary or one secondary, and here's all the winds on the other secondary, and you want to make the equal 6.3 volts AC. You're never going to have the exact number of windings on each one, because transformers are wound like pickups. It's imprecise, especially back in the day. And because the way transformers are made, one may be a small area like this, and one may be going a larger coil just to physically fit in the damn thing. So you're never going to have as good a balance between this side, this secondary and this secondary, reference to the center tap, which at ground makes them be a center point, as you would if you disconnect that center tap and use resistors, which you can select for much higher tolerance than the transformer is usually wound. That's part one. Part two is if you have a short in your heater supply and you have the center tap of the power transformer heater supply connected to chassis, to ground, before the mains fuse can trip, you can just emulate the secondary windings inside that power transformer. And then, because there wasn't fusing, you are out a $200, $300 transformer, then you need another $200 to change it out. Versus if you have half-watt 100-ohm resistors, if you get that heater short before the mains fuse can trip, one or both of those resistors will burn, at which point there's no opportunity for that transformer to heat up and burn its windings. So instead of a new transformer and all that labor, you're talking 2 5-cent resistors. And if they're mounted correctly away from other things with some space around them, they can char and not burn anything else on the board. So that's why in a lot of the old Fender models, you'll see them mounted from the pilot lamp assembly to ground. So if something burns there, it's not going to really affect anything. They'll burn, but there's no flame out. Or in a lot of things where I'm adding them to amps, I'll put them on the octal socket, say it's a twin or similar AB763 model. I'll put them from pin 8 to pin 2 and pin 8 to pin 7, sometimes on the same tube, sometimes on two adjacent tubes, just depending on how much real estate there is. And you get a better ground reference as far as the balance goes, and you get kind of a built-in fusing, because heater fusing is difficult to do right. It's often a false point of failure and an unnecessary complication. If it falsely fails, but you have to pull the chassis to change it out because it's on the board, well, that just costs someone a gig. Versus, half-watt resistors aren't going to fail for false. There's not going to be a false tripping of those, but they will protect your amp if there's an actual problem. Hope that was brief enough for you. I tend to go on because things interest me. All right. right, David Marr is asking about the Blues Junior, and Brad is ably handling that. Thank you, E-Beep. Thank you very much. Hello, Cuckoo Gear Kook. Top of the morning to y'all. And Travis is here. Brad's got his breakfast whiskey. That's so Australian. Brad, you know you didn't have to do that. $10 Australian. What is that, a nickel? Let me take my car keys out of my pocket. They're stabbing me for the last 10 minutes. Volkswagen key fob. Phenomenal in theory, but once in a while in my pocket that button pushes and then it's stabbing McStabby face. Only it's not my face. Let's see, scrolling past some of the idle chat while I was under the desk fiddling with USB cables. Hey, Nola Rocks. Ferd Burfy. Is that Burfy or Burfle? I'm sorry. I still can't see. Damn those eyes. I have an Ignator Tweaker 15 with 6v6s. You can substitute. He's read that he can substitute EL34s without having to change the cathode bias resistor. True. You can. I do not recommend it for the following reason. Unless it is one of the last Tweaker 15s made. Most Tweaker 15s have a severely underrated power transformer. Now, I'm friends with Bruce Ignator. This is not a reflection on Bruce. He sold the company and he sold that design, and then they made that without his input overseas, including speccing out a very, very cheap, not just inexpensive, but cheap, as in shoddy, power transformer. So it is barely capable of providing the current needed with 6v6s. I think 34s is asking for trouble. On paper, yes, the circuit, its cathode bias, it will run fine. And if they had used a better power transformer, which they did in the last year or so of the run, or I don't know if there's still a going concern. At some point, the power transformer was upgraded. So if you can confirm you have one of the good ones, which you should not have to do in any product sold when it comes to power transformers, the one that doesn't die, if you look at it cross-eyed, then you can try it. But most Ignator Tweakers, 40s and 15s, I would advise against it because it's tempting fate. Yeah, I need to remember to click live chat myself. Thanks, Brad. I usually do that, but I was under the desk cussing at my internet. All right, so let me scroll back up to the top. All right, because I changed it from all to live chat, I missed something. I missed a question, perhaps a paid question. Let me go back to top chat, see if it comes back. No. Somehow it has started to lose things. Let's see if by any chance it's still there on my iPad. Sorry about this. Yeah, I missed a good one. E-Beep says, sorry, and thank you for the donation. Tried to reach via email. My 74 AC30 needs servicing, modding, playing a festival with Lord Huron, Modest Mouse, Cat Power, said August. In August would be great to use it for this show. Any advice? Where are you located? Well, you can't tell me now. Two things. First of all, I'm way behind on emails because I get between spam bots having found my business address and people wanting to know if I will do their Blues Junior or their Pro Junior or other amps that aren't worth shipping across the country. I have a deluge, and I've had other things going on. I threw my back out, which is one of the reasons I haven't posted a video in 3 weeks. And then we're doing some home renovations, and I've been redoing my office space, which you'll see. You can get a little sneak preview in this video. And working on amps to make up for the lost time throwing my back out where I couldn't pick up at Princeton. And so I was unable to make videos of the amps I was fixing then because I just needed to get them done. And I've also gotten behind on the emails. So that's one, and I apologize for that. Number two, if your name is not eBeep, if you have a different email address, do me a favor and tell me your name. You don't have to put your email address on the chat, but what to look for. And after the chat, I'll go back and find it and contact you. Hopefully, your phone number will be there. We'll get in touch with each other. All right, let's see. I have limited experience with good cell amps. I'm going to catch up to what's on my screen there, so I don't have to do this. Matt Johnson, good to see you, man. Coffee today, as almost always, is Maxwell House French Roast in my Braun coffee machine set to bold hot. Thanks, Derek Wyman. Appreciate that. I'm almost caught up. David Carter says, sounds great, thank you. Hey, Lyle, any idea where I can find the tall finish nuts for the switches on my Vox AC30 CC1? Ooh, those, I'm not sure who made those. I don't think Vox sells them anymore. There are other replacement ones, but you need to verify the threading, where you can get a dress nut, and you can get that. I'm trying to remember if I got that from Mauser or whether that was just a CE distribution. But anyway, there are dress nuts. I think that was a CE distribution, and if you're not signed up with a business account from them, you would use tubesandmore.com. Same stuff, just you would pay retail. There are dress washers that are similar, not quite as conical. You could also just find someone who has got a dead non-working one and get the parts off. And by the way, if you have a custom classic Vox and you want to know how to remove those nuts, the answer is not pliers. I've seen so many come in, they're all chewed up from pliers and they have gouges in them and there are big scrapes all on the top panel. What that is threaded around the actual bushing of the switch, and it has, I'm almost caught up, it has some thread lock, some Loctite. And so what you do is you get some acetone, or you can use your nail polish remover if you're so inclined, and a Q-tip. And you dip the Q-tip in the acetone, and you put a drop on one side and drop on the other side, and kind of just get little drops of acetone on top of the bushing, and it'll all seep down. It won't hurt. The acetone will not hurt the control panel or the lettering on the Custom Classic. Wait 30 seconds. Wait a minute. Grab it with your thumb and forefinger, and then turn counterclockwise. And if it still doesn't budge, usually it does at that point. If it still doesn't, repeat at the cost of about 4 to 8 drops of nail polish remover. That's a nail polish remover, acetone. And a Q-tip, it'll dissolve that Loctite, and then it just comes right off. And if you want to reapply it, they will vibrate loose and get lost if you don't use some kind of Loctite. You can use Loctite, or you can use a very small dab of nail polish, which will also dissolve it when needed with nail polish remover. All right, so Boston Guitarist asked an interesting question. Hey Lyle, is there any advantage to Jose style clipping diode mod rather than using a distortion pedal with a Marshall? Yeah, I'm trying to think of the best way to articulate this. Let me get my iPad stand so I'm not just flapping this thing around. Each tube stage in an amplifier clips differently, generates different harmonics in reaction to an increased input signal than the others. We tune, as amp designers, we tune this with choice of plate resistors, choice of voltages, choices of cathode resistors, how each tube is biased. You can read about warm biasing, cold biasing, cool biasing. It's not just the output sections. Every preamp tube in most amplifiers is a cathode bias tube, just like you get in a cathode biased output section. And so I can design one tube to have very little, if any, distortion. And that's what's usually done on the input stage of most amps, including Marshalls. The first tube is usually run pretty clean, the first triode. You can also design them to take any incoming signal and say, I'm just going to clip and generate all kinds of even or odd ordered harmonics. And that's going to behave in a very different way to the same level increase on the input of it. And so if you are putting an overdrive pedal in front of a traditional Marshall, you are getting as accurately as possible the amp's reproduction of that signal with its pedal-generated harmonics, etc., etc. Whereas if you are doing the Jose thing or similar tricks you can do, you are actually, actually affecting the way preceding stages are loaded, and subsequent stages, subsequent stages will react to that clipping, that harmonic content. Now, I'm not saying that either way is better or worse, but there is a difference, and it can be quite a bit of a difference. Typically, the amps which have the Jose kind of stuff have an awful lot of gain added, because you will lose some of that gain through the Jose stuff. The diodes do add some compression, but the amp has enough gain to offset that. And that compression is a big part of the sound, and it's really harder to get that out of a traditional overdrive pedal. So the best way to find out is if you had an amp which had selectable Jose clipping, and you tried it with and without that, and without a pedal in front of it, or both. If you want to know more about that, my buddy Jason Tong at Headfirst Amplification, has a lot of great information on that. He tends to specialize in the higher gain amps, and that kind of mod is what his customer base really is built on. And that's the kind of thing I know how to do it. But I'm in Memphis, and most of the Marshalls I get are more classic, and most of the amplifiers I get are Fenders, etc., because that's what the average Memphis guitarist uses. But if you go back and look at my Randy Rhoads overview Marshall, and some other stuff that's come in on my bench, I know how this stuff works. It's just not my bread and butter. But Jason tends to specialize in that, and he explains it very well. And he will show you audible examples. All right, I'm caught up now with what the screen, the big screen says. So I shouldn't have to squint at the iPad anymore. All right. Yeah, Brad says regarding the noise cancellation, noise suppression on the mic, that it's weird to have total silence between pauses, and I agree with that. That's why I'm hoping that the OBS will work with waves better on the Mac, because I can, rather than an all or nothing noise suppression like on here, I can dial in just enough. Now there is a second setting to the noise suppressor in OBS that lets you do that, but it really kind of affects your voice a little bit, almost like cupping, just little slight artifacts, like something's doing that. Yeah, Shay, yeah. Microphones are fun to play with. Am I plosive? Am I popping too much? I've heard some sibilant whistling. That's my COVID tooth. I need to make an appointment with a different dentist, not the one who mangled my upper jaw when he extracted this tooth. I had a tooth crack at the beginning of COVID, and I couldn't go to a dentist for a long time because no one wanted to take their life in their hands. And when I could eventually get to a dentist, that crack had gotten to the point where the tooth needed to come out. And a dentist who shall not be named now, because I'm sure he has lawyers, though I do too, and it may come to that, removed bone going up from the tooth all in here. And they tried to do a bone graft so that they could do an implant, the little surgical steel post and all that, and that didn't work, and the bone graft didn't take, and I've just got missing bone all up here, and I've got to find a second dentist on my insurance to say, hey, is there any option besides just a bridge? Odds are, some point within the year, I'll just be an old man with a bridge. I'll have that tooth back. How I cracked the tooth is a cool story for another day. But, if that's the worst thing that happens to me during COVID, it was not actually. We lost my sister. But this is a happy, fun channel, so we'll make fun of my missing tooth. But yeah, my sister was one of the first to pass in that before people even knew it was COVID. Boy, this is just a fun day. All right. Nicholas Burnt, hey, he asked about a B52 AT100 amp head. Any way to make it more reliable without major surgery or evisceration? Nicholas, I hate to tell you, no, the B52s are garbage. The last two that came in had just burned the output tube board because they don't know how to lay out traces. They don't know how to design for high current, high temperature tubes mounted to a PCB. It's a really inexpensive amp made as cheaply as possible by people who do not know how to design tube amps and have no business selling that on the market. And the cost to fix one properly vastly exceeds the price of the amplifier. Sell it, use it as a plant stand, whatever you need to do, but don't throw any money at it. If it's working for now, use it for now, but it'll probably kill you, whatever output tubes are in it, which are probably worth more than the amp itself. Sorry. Again, hey, dead sister, B52 bad. I'm a happiness, sunshine and light channel today. Hey, Wayne Memphis Mojo, thank you very much. Hey, Rex FX. Hey, Chris Butler. Wayne, super reverb upgrades. Yeah, let me give you a call either this afternoon or tomorrow. I've got some deluxe reverb upgrades to do starting tomorrow, and I've got some Voxes to finish. I have been, this is going to be a wide-ranging ramble today. I have been reorganizing everything. You'll get to see big changes on the bench and the organization of the space soon. Just so I can work more efficiently, I had a really long 8-foot plastic folding table, but I found myself working in a little postage stamp section of it, just surrounded by all the clutter of other ongoing apps, and I couldn't find things, and I'm really, really trying to get organized and know where there are the things that their fathers left there just the night before. David Marr says, I have a brand new Fender Blues Junior amp that buzzes and hums at low levels, despite new exchange tubes being put in. I'm not really sure to think or how to address it. There is one video I put up. If you go to my channel after this and go to the playlists, I have blues. I have one playlist for Hot Rod Deluxes and Blueses. The Blues Juniors are in there, and there's a video in there. Or you can just search my channel for Blues Junior. One of them's just a way that most people can reduce a lot of hum in the Blues Junior. assuming there's no problem with the filter caps, which is common, sadly. But if the filter caps are okay, you can just move the ribbon cable in a specific way, and it's safe as long as you watch the video twice before you do it. Make sure you understand everything I'm showing and why, and all the safety precautions. Don't see what I'm doing and say, oh. But that can help a lot. David S. Excalibur 15. I'm gonna finish up the one that I was contracted to build, and then I'm waiting. I've got to find the time to get some chassis made fully to my spec with the logos, because I've been unable to find any company that does small production faceplates that I need. So it would be much better to do it where the labels and all the graphics are just part of the chassis. I think it's a hard thing when you don't want just to make a Fender or Marshall clone. Acrylic faceplates are easily done, but I don't want a plexi style faceplate because it's the chassis is that thick and the panels that thick, and then you have to, the pots that I want to use don't have bushings long enough to use a tooth washer as well, and so I don't want to go to the route of a Dr. Z and have all my pots held on by hope and prayer. I want them to be secured, which means I need a thinner panel and thin acrylic cracks. So cadmium sulfide, that's right, Brad. That's the one that you can't have a Fender Roach sold new in the EU. Zoot Allures. Hi, Lyle. Should I be using the standby switch on my Vox AC15? Thanks. It depends. If your AC15 is the AC15 custom, you should. It has filter caps which are rated for just above the unloaded voltage, but it's a good thing to use. If you have the AC15 Custom Classic, you should. It has filter caps that are just barely rated for the unloaded voltage. If you have an actual AC15 from the 60s, no, you don't need to. The AC15C and CC series both have solid-state rectification. The actual AC15s, including the AC15 hand-wired, which I almost forgot about, use tube rectifiers. So if you have the original JMI or the AC or the hand-wired version, you don't need to use standby. In fact, you should not. I think the Heritage series as well. Yeah, you don't see many of them anymore, but the TV Heritage series, it has a rectifier tube. You don't have to and should not use standby on those. I don't remember if there's a Bruno AC15. Hey, Jonas Gravland from Denmark. Nice to join us. Thank you. Yeah, I have experience with the Filmo Sam amps and the conversions, and it is very kitschy, and people love to do that kind of thing. It is not a good chassis for making an amp. It is very hostile to making a good amp out of it. It can be done. If it's done well, it's extraordinarily expensive because it's very time consuming. I think it's kitschy. I think, someone plugged a guitar into a Filmo sound and said, that sounds all right, I'll use that. And someone tweaked it a little bit, and now it's become this thing where the people were seeking them out to make them into guitar amps. Whereas I think they really are just at best a make-do solution. If you were to bring me a Filmo sound, I would say, no, I'm not doing that. For less money, let me build you a 5E3 Deluxe that sounds infinitely better. Hey, Rax, yeah, it's an SM57. I just got the shock mount and the pop screen, which helps with plosives. And not the tooth whistle, the COVID whistle, but it helps with plosives. And because I'm putting the windscreen on a little bit past the capsule, it helps with the proximity, though I can still welcome to Coffee with Bach. Wayne says all the non-pro things I do on my channel just makes it real and less of an advertising. Well, I want to be pro and real. So I'm getting there, I think. I mean, I don't think you're going to tune in one day and the entire set is full of blue RGB lights and I'm not going to have crazy partnerships with this brand or that brand or anything. But I'd like to consistently have very good visual and audio content, so that if I'm working on an app, you really see what I'm doing. You really hear what it sounds like, and when I'm working on the bench, the various sounds and my voice aren't distracting. I don't want things distracting from the information. So, Wallpaper Music says the echo at my end is not tolerable. Which end? And that's a weird personal problem. Mr. Owl says, good day. What are your thoughts on Rivera amps? I own the Pubster and want a fuller sound out of it. Is that possible? Riveras are good amps. Very good amps. I don't know all of them. I would say that of the last one that I have, in fact, it's still over there because it has a noise in the reverb circuit. I recapped it, found a bad pot. I changed out the pot. We'll come back to that in a second. And at the end of that process, there's a buzz in the reverb that I've got to track down. That's not here or there as to Rivera's quality. It's a 30-year-old amp, and it's over. Other than the reverb, it's sounding great now. The reverb will get fixed. The two caveats I have with Rivera's is that they use very hard to source PCB pots, which means, and for most of the pot positions, which aren't switched, you can just put in an alpha or whatever, or a CTS, and just run some wires to the board, not a problem. But for certain positions, including the one that was faulty on this one, they used a switched pot with a unique PCB footprint and very long D-shaft shafts. So pretty much to fix that amp, I had to get the Rivera pot, which is now only available from Rivera, and it's not something that they can order again unless they were to place an order for 10,000 of them. They just have some in their inventory still. So that's one concern I have with the Rivera, though it's not that major. It's not going to affect most users, but it's a consideration. The other thing is just I don't agree with all of Paul's voicing choices, but that's highly subjective, entirely subjective, really. He has some stuff that sounds great and some stuff that I'm like, ooh, if I was in a Boston cover band, that would rock, But they do what he set out for them to do, and a lot of people love them. But I'm not familiar with the Pubster. David Marr, the hum and buzz on the Blues Junior. Yeah, check the video. Yeah, hey Chris Butler, the Tech21 Trademark 60 is a good solid state amp. Yeah, so is the 120. Tech21's pedals sound great. Build quality is abysmal, or at least on the older ones. Hopefully their amps are built better inside. I've not had one in. But the Trademark series is a good choice. And, the nice thing about those is I believe they do have smack. I believe that coffee is not what you should do when you do voiceover work, but I like coffee more than I like sounding like a pro. Anyway, I think most of the Trademark series does have an effects loop, which means that you could use the amp itself as a really nice standalone traditional amplifier, or you could use a digital modeler running into it and make the thing usable for other gigs, or both. You could just grab the Trademark 60 by itself for small gigs. Two Trademark 60s run as stereo power amps for your digital setup for larger stages. There's nothing wrong with solid state or digital if it's done well and you program it correctly. Most presets are garbage. Most of those effects that the presets have, you will get lost on stage. You will not sound great at all unless you're in headphones in your bedroom. But it is possible to dial them in and get wonderful sounds. Thanks, Nola. Joe C. asks, I know they use deoxit frequently. Yeah, there's deoxit there in the red and fader lube in the green, just underneath my meters. Not opposed to paying for quality products, but is there a place for a regular electrical cleaner? Depends on what you're cleaning. If you're cleaning a contact on a switch, not a switch, a jack. If you have a switchcraft jack and the contact's a little bit tarnished, say it's not normaling all the way, you can use almost any electrical cleaner for that. For pots, Deoxit followed by Fader Lube is the way to go. That said, I do not instantly reach for any cleaner until I have physically moved a pot many times. A lot of times it's just a surface layer of dust on the wafer, and just moving the pot back and forth will remove that noise, remove the dust, remove any impediment to conductivity without introducing any new solvents. Because every time you use even a good contact cleaner, you can remove parts of the carbon track. You can loosen or flush out lubrication grease within the pot. That's why I follow it with Fader Lube. In theory, just give it a good turn every once in a while on your amp, and you won't need to do that with a traditional amp. Even if you don't use a channel. I see a lot of guys in their Fender, the normal channels all at 0, and it's been like that for years, and then the pots don't turn. I've got to clean them. It doesn't take very long, once a month, to just go like that on all your knobs. Just give them all a little bit of a spin. Hey, Ansa Johns, thank you very much. He wants my opinion on current production EL34 tubes, mainly thinking about reliability. 2 years ago, I would have said the Mullard reissues are my current favorites, and the JJ EL34 2s are possibly the most reliable, while not quite sounding as good. Or was it the 2 or the L? Brad, weigh in on that. I'm trying to remember. But between JJ's quality becoming inconsistent during and since COVID, and the whole Russian thing, which is interesting to watch since yesterday, the Mullards aren't really reliably available, and if you find them, they're probably last year's rejects. Right now, I'm liking the TADs. The TAD red bass EL34s have been really good for me, and the price is very good, especially considering what tube prices were like a year and a half ago. Simon Tokes says, which newer Fender Tweed would you recommend? Is it worth more worth buying an amp kit by a tube amp doctor? Amp kits can be great depending on who puts them together. So a good amp kit built by a good builder will give you great results. The world's best amp kit built by a hack will give you an unsafe, noisy piece of. And a really great builder could also use very cheap stuff to give you a good result. But the best combination is, good stuff in, good stuff out. Of the newer Fender Tweeds, the only one, if it's still made, that I consider worthwhile is the limited 59 Bassman LTD. I don't know if that's still being made, but if you can get a used one of those, the LTD 59 Bassman reissue was a really great amp. It's easily tweakable to be even better, especially the ones which had the old Eminence Alnico speakers. Those things are phenomenal and hard to find. But all the Clapton stuff, the Champ, the little Tweed thing, and what was that awful one? They've got a Tremolux where they put a truly stupid mistake in that amp, and every tech who's got one of those EC Tremoluxes come in and looks at it and just, so what the hell? When did Fender forget how to amp? But they're not. The modern Fenders are nowhere Tweeds, aside from the Bassman, aren't really worth your money. Look at Victoria, look at other Tweed builders if you want it done right. David S. Says your setup looks and sounds great. No need to overanalyze. That's literally what I do. Have you noticed? My job is literally to analyze and overanalyze things. People are like, you're always finding problems with these amps. I am an amp tech. That is literally what I'm here to do. I find the problems and hopefully I solve them so they are not your problems when I give the amp back to you. Or I find the problems and then you know about those problems and you don't buy the piece up before. So we've almost up an hour and I am lip smacking like crazy. So I'm going to try to get through a few more questions and we're going to whistle. Isn't that nice? Isn't that special? And we're going to take about a 7-minute break in a few. Let's get through a few more. Current orange solid state is pretty decent, Darren. Their pots break if you look at them. Yeah, the early 80s Peavey Special 130, Wayne. You know, the 70s and 80s Peavey's solid states are good. The treble wallpaper music, I think you don't know how your setup should work. Sorry about that. I don't have any idea what you're hearing, but the rest of us aren't. So anyway, Wayne, like Wayne said, yeah, the 70s and 80s Peavey solid state stuff, when it's still working, is really well done. And that goes to the early 90s. The trouble is, Peavey used to be one of the world's best companies as far as taking care of the customers. And they had a huge parts warehouse. And if something went wrong, you could order a part. Well, Peavey is a shadow of its former self. Huge, almost no one's left in Meridian. The parts warehouse is essentially no more. You can't get those parts. And Peavey was the only company that had stock of a lot of those old transistors that were used back then. So when those Peaveys tend to die these days, many of the models can be fixed. Sometimes you can find a newer compatible transistor, but not always. So every technology sunsets. Tubes are only around because of tanks and amplifiers. But as far as transistor stuff, the rest of the world has moved on to tiny little things and op amps and chips and things that would, entire computers that fit on my thumbnail. Not the 60s and 70s and early 80s stuff. Hey, thanks, Trevor Norse. And yeah, Dave makes good amps. I saw a guy, was my Runt 20, even videos that came out a while ago. I see every comment as it comes in. And some guy said, "It sounds like you're just trying to sell the Friedman amps, and I'm not going to subscribe to you." And that's fine. That's his choice. But it's funny when there are people who think that all I do is I shit on amps. Lyle shits on amps. That's my channel, and I just find everything wrong. And then when I find an amp that has something that's not wrong, when it's a good amp, then I get accused of being a shill. Now, if I'm getting paid to give good reviews, then Dave and John, you owe me some big checks, man, because I haven't seen a dime. I have become friends with Dave Friedman. I've become friends with John Suhr and quite a few other last names that you recognize on the face of amps, because this is a very small, weird community of techs. And those of us who know what we're doing find each other. Hey there, Brad. So it's cool that, we talk. If Dave Friedman did not make a good amp, he would not have been in that small group of techs who talk to each other, because he would not have been invited. If I was not working at a certain level, I would not know any of those guys because I would not have been invited to the party. So when you're in the party, so to speak, you've already kind of established your bona fides, your bona fides. He's bona fide. He's a paterfamilias. And so it's not that I'm friends with Dave and therefore I think his amps are good. I'm friends with Dave and I met him because his amps were good. And so we were at the same party pretty much. Sometimes wearing the same outfit. We have the same haircut most of the time. His always does really cool things. He's got really pretty eyes. So if I say, hey, John Suhr makes a hell of an amp, or Dave Friedman makes a hell of an amp, then suddenly I'm a shill. I guess I need to have like Monday Meh amps. Like, hey, it's all right. Who'd watch that? Yeah, well, Chris, after this, you can go watch Keith's Bassman premiere. And I've got a blue denim shirt I could wear in his honor, or Beato's. But I've got this office room, the front of the house, has got the worst air conditioning of all of them. I need to go down to the basement crawl space. I'm sure there's probably like a gash in the supply to that vent. So if I were to put on a long sleeve blue denim shirt in this office, you'd be just seeing sweat drip. So Keith's trademark is safe until I get my air conditioning improved. Boston Guitarist, is there a catch with Serotone amps? They seem to be too good to be true for the money. I've had a few Serotones on the channel, and overall, let's put the best way I put this without Nick coming for me, because he gets very angry with any criticism, implied or explicit. The transformers are generic, and they have very suspiciously squared off corners. I don't know how long term they're going to last. I don't know how long term the filter caps are going to last, because I don't know what they are. They've got orange plastic on them that say Serotone, but I don't know who's making them, so I don't know whether that's a 60-degree cap, an 85-degree cap, 105-degree cap. I don't know whether it's going to last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Of the ones I've seen, the build quality, of the ones assembled by Serotone, the build quality has been excellent. Most of the component choices are phenomenal. There are places where they puzzlingly will use really cheap parts, like IEC connectors are made of this really brittle plastic that breaks, and a good quality IEC connector is like $3, but it's easy to swap that out. The fuse holders, similarly, I've had some really crappy plastic, fragile fuse holders on Serotones. Again, a good one's like $5-7, pretty easy to change out. So you're getting a good circuit that's usually built pretty well, and there's just a couple of weird things. Like they'll use a really nice resistors and really nice film caps. I don't know what the filter caps are. The power, the IC connector, the fuse tend to break if you look at them sideways, but they'll use pretty good quality switches. If you look at the Serotone JCM800 2204 video I've got up, they had a totally unnecessary bus wire along the back for all the pots to ground to, but the bus wire was so thick and had this coating on this copper, they were never able to successfully solder to that at the factory, and you see that in the video. But that was a relatively easy fix. At the end of the day, which is kind of summarizing what you'll see in that video, even with all the drawbacks of that Serotone, for $1,200, it kills anything that Marshall has on the market, or has had on the market since about 1987, 88, as far as quality goes. So, I would not put it up against a Sur. I would not put it up against a Germino, certainly. Germino, Sur, Metropolis, some of Friedman's higher-end stuff, next range up above the Runts and, the 20, 50-watt things. Friedman's got some stuff with a lot of hand-built stuff. But Serotone offers a lot of bang for the buck, but the average guitarist won't know that, I need to have this power jack changed out, or next 5-10 years I'll probably have to have all the filter caps changed. I'm saying probably, not definitely, but it would not surprise me. DB says he has a grandson that looks just like you. Well, okay, I'm sorry for him. Hey, Richard Nagamitsu. Okay, wallpaper music. I'm glad that you figured out the weird comb filtering. Echoing is fun, but no one likes it, and I've aside from my internet disconnecting because of USB weirdness earlier, I've been pretty consistent about making sure that the audio was going to be good for you guys. If you wanted to hear hell, I could turn on the loop back, and all of a sudden, everything I say would just go. I won't do that to you guys again. Sorry, I should really do Obnoxious warning in 3, 2, 1. Okay, I think we're going to take a 7-minute break. Then we're going to get to David Maher's question about the difference between hum, buzzing, and oscillation. So let's take about a 7-minute intermission. Everyone do your thing. Hope I didn't keep you waiting too long. Looked through that crack in the curtains and saw 236 and went to get a second cup of coffee. I came back and it was at 0. So I probably should have used this thing. It's not just a fashion accessory, but okay. Back to David's question: is there a difference between hum, buzzing, and oscillation? Yeah, hum is usually going to be, well, in the United States, it's going to be 60 hertz, 120 hertz. If it's in the UK, it's going to be 50 hertz or 100 hertz, or other countries that use 50 hertz mains. Sometimes, I'm trying to think of how deep in the tech weeds. Sometimes there will be, say, 120 hertz hum from filtering, or 60 hertz hum from the heater supply, and it's being picked up by some component in the signal path. And you won't hear it as 120 hertz or 60 hertz. You'll hear it as some multiple of that. So you may hear something that's kind of going, and it's really an upper harmonic of something down below that's going. I think I was a little bit pitchy on that, dog. But so sometimes you'll think that what you're hearing is upper frequency hum, buzz. It's really caused by a grounding issue. It's really 60 or 120. But where it's being picked up in the circuit, say you've got a cathode set up on a tube that's not going to pass anything much below 200 hertz, you're not going to hear the fundamental. You're just hearing the overtones of that. Oscillation is entirely different. An oscillation usually exhibits in one of 3 ways. Sometimes you'll get wild motorboating, as if the entire output is unstable. Sometimes you'll get high-pitched squeals, like you have a Marshall and you turn up the treble or you turn up the gain, and all of a sudden it starts squealing. Other times, though, you don't hear a big, bad problem. It's like your ears just kind of close in. It's like when you're, you ever been driving through some hills and all of a sudden your ears open up and you didn't even realize that they were blocked before, but just all of a sudden you hear better? Imagine the reverse of that. You're sitting there, you're turning the treble up, and all of a sudden your sound stage shrinks. What that is that there's oscillation happening in the amp. You're not getting a big squeal. You're not getting wild motorboating, but some stage is going into cutoff where it just can't amplify anymore cleanly. I could go more into depth on this. And that can be a sign of multiple things. Sometimes it's just a matter of you need to shield things better. But yeah, buzzing and humming are usually separate from oscillation, except that any of them can reveal a problem with a ground scheme in an amp. It's nice when you just hear a nice big but that's rarely the case. Usually it's something more subtle. In a Blues Junior, hum is usually going to be caused by one of 3 factors. Leaking / bad filter caps, mismatched output tubes, or tubes that are biased too hot and are failing because Blues Juniors over-bias their output tubes, and the tubes do like to fail. 3, the ribbon cable's too close to the primary wire, the blue one, and you can see that in that video. Hey Diego, how do you contact me for an amp repair job? Like I mentioned earlier, I'm drowning in emails. I'm going to make the time to revamp my website, and one of the first things I'm going to do is set up a contact page, a form. And at the very top of that form, it's going to say, I'm not going to take Pro Juniors. I'm not interested in Blues Juniors. I would very rarely be interested in Fender reissue amps because I'm talking about amps that are shipped to me from across the country. So, and that the average is, the minimum is going to be at least $250 on most things. It's not like, hey, you sent it to me and I sent it back and it was $60. Shipping on just a chassis alone can be $40 to $90 depending on where you live and how heavy the chassis is. This is not, I get many more emails from people than people are seriously going to go for it. I need to say it nicely, I need to weed out the tire kickers. Let them self-weed out. Say, hey, my rate is X, and that'll change as the years go on, and the average repair is, $150 to $350. For your model, maybe I could say, hey, the average fender restoration for a 60s or 70s fender is going to be typically $240 to $400 labor. Parts could run anywhere from 50 to 150. Tubes, as needed, but a full set of tubes for this model would cost about $200. So you can have, if you want it really done well, it could be an $800 bill if you need tubes, a transformer, massive cleaning, total recap, all the DC removal. So when you see a video on my channel of me making a 64 twin reverb back to 1964, that is tremendous honor and responsibility on my end, but it is not an inexpensive process. And I just want people to know that ahead of time. And at that point, once they know that he's not going to work on my Blues Junior, I'll go find someone else. This is not going to be a cheap thing. I'll find someone else. At that point, then I can get an email through the forum to a separate email address than the one the spam bots have, and it'll say, "Hey, what model and what year, make, and model amp do you own?" Okay, it's a 66 Super Reverb. Can you describe the problem? Don't tell me about every other amp you've owned. I don't need your life story. What problem are you experiencing? And at that point, I can reply to those emails, and I'll have people's phone numbers and their actual name. So I don't have bebopdeluxe@yahoo.com. I don't know who Bebop Deluxe is. I can't find Bebop Deluxe's phone number on the internet. So if you're John Smith and your number is this, I'll contact you. I know it sounds like I'm setting up all these conditions and making it hard to get to me, but I'm going to have to in order to do this in any sane, fair way to you guys. Scroll too fast, too far. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. Well, I'm trying to get to where I was. Why is this thing so evil? Okay, almost there. All right. Edge of Eternity. No, I've not had a vintage sound amp in, so I don't have any opinion on them. Sorry. Yeah, Brad, Ohm's Law is just a suggestion to some people. Hey, Wayne, he sent Diego to Martin Music. Eric and I are trying to gracefully part ways on amp service for a time. It's one of the reasons I'm going to be changing how I accept things and how I'm contactable. I have been very, very busy, and for every guy who knows who I am through the YouTube or from amp stuff, there's a guy who just dropped his amp off at the local music store, and when it takes me a month to get to his whatever, and then the bill is $200, they get furious, and Eric has to deal with that, and I don't want to go into that too much here, but until I get caught up, and I may only do selective things for local work, because, and not to be egotistical, but every Blues Junior that I fix, which is just a Band-Aid to keep the damn thing going again, is a good amp that I don't get to work on. And it's frustrating as a person who tries, I really strive to do very good work. When everything, I got some groups of people tell me I'm a genius and everything's fantastic. I've got other guys tell me I totally suck and whatever. But then there's people who are just like second guessing everything I say. Like your amp's got a bad preamp tube. Well, how do you know? Because you want to do that. Do you know who I am? But you don't want to be that guy. But like every time I have to justify something like that, that's a 20-minute conversation I don't get paid for, and then they're mad that the next guy's mad that his amp wasn't done because the first guy ate up an entire afternoon arguing with me over how to fix his $100, $300 amp. It's not a great thing for me. It's turned into a problem for Martin, and we're going to revisit this in a little while, because Eric and I have been friends for a long time. This is not a falling out. This is okay, it's not working as it is now. So hey, Nola Rocks, any guidance for proper startup of a 1961 Fender concert amp with respect to the standby switch? The 61 should have a tube rectifier, so just leave it always in play and just use the power switch. Thanks, David Hudson. Yeah, I've been working on the lighting. I need another light that'll light that back corner a bit more, and a light on the print on the wall there. That's Calder. That's been in my family for a long time. That's a real one. And we've got a lot of good art. That one's one of the ones that's truly, museum grade. It's a print, but it's an actual print that Calder did. So I need to get a light just for that. It's not the kind of value that someone's going to see these videos and come and break in my house to steal it. I keep the Picasso in the bathroom, but it's nice enough that I want to feature it. And I need a light over here shining on the bench a bit. That'll just show, if I have an amp there, that'll show the face of the amp better. But and I've got a light that's going to go on that bench back over my left shoulder, just to be a bit of interest to balance out the light on the scope there. Everything's mirrored for me. It takes a lot of work to look this laid back and natural. Fly casual. Let's see. What I really need to start an amp repair shop as far as tools go. Oh, man. If you're asking that question, I mean this very kindly, Axe Monkey. You should not start an amp repair shop until you have repaired a bunch of amps. And so start with your own and your buddy's amps. And you'll figure out pretty quickly what tools you need. And then you'll accumulate them. And only at the point where, hey, I've done like 20 amps and I've had all the stuff on hand that I needed, are you even remotely close to the point where you're going to do this commercially, professionally. What you see on my bench there is a small selection of the tools I have. I have almost 24 tools on that bench. These are the most commonly used ones. And then you see this big Craftsman or a Husky thing with 10 drawers, a workspace underneath the bench, and a bench top. That's all full of tools that I use all the time. I'm about to get some other bookshelves on either side of this desk here, which will hold more stuff. And then I've got these wire rack shelves, but you'll see soon, and I'm going to do a tour of the shop video soon, but I've got to reorganize what's on these wire shelves. I'll have other stuff there, like I have a shelf for cleaning solvents. So I cannot answer that question, but until you can answer that question for yourself, you really should only do this for yourself and your friends as you learn. And I mean that nicely, but otherwise, I can't tell you where to drop $10,000 all at once to get up and running. It adds up, and you got to plan on the storage for everything and the organization, which is what I'm redoing. DB says, you running a GTI? Oh hell yeah! No, not a GTI or an R. I have the standard turbo, which is still crazy fast. I'm already faster off the light than most Mustangs in this town. I can get from 0 to 10 over the speed limit really fast, and then I'm going, speed limit or 10 over most places. So there's no place that I could drive a GTI or an R in Memphis. Once or twice a year, maybe up in some mountain roads, or if I were to go to West Texas, I could really use that. The rest of the time, I'd just be paying higher insurance, higher a note, and buying more tires more often to go the same, put in perspective, my little standard 4-door Golf turbo, not the diesel, the 1.8, is faster than a 70s Porsche 911. I don't need faster than that for in-town or highway driving. I can pass anyone on the highway. If someone's ahead of me and they're going 60 in a 75 zone, I can pass them in like 3 seconds. And it really is a fun car to drive and holds amplifiers. So let's see here. Matt Fields, there are variation. Matt says a well-designed amp shouldn't need a standby switch. Any newish amp shouldn't need one. There are exceptions, SVTs and similar huge things like that. When you get into huge current and plate voltages like that, cathode stripping can be a thing. Not cathode stripping, but anyway, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. There are exceptions, and there are times when, for example, and there are ways around it beyond a standby switch. But say you have a Marshall, you got 1,000 volts filter cap capacity on the first and second nodes, so there's no reason to use a standby switch on that. But say on that same super lead, until the tubes have warmed up, if you take it straight out of standby and with the solid state rectifier, take it just power it on without standby with solid state rectifier for a few seconds, there's a huge potential between the grid and the cathode of the cathode follower stage, and that can nuke a tube pretty quickly. There are ways around that. But there are rare instances where a standby switch can be a good thing. It just usually has not been implemented any better than Fender just kind of offhandedly did in 1958. Diego asked if that copper tape around power transformer really makes a difference. I am not a transformer expert. I know which ones sound and work well, but as to the design and the interleaving and all this stuff, I've got friends like Joe Pampel who used to do obsolete electronics. He designed and built transformers, and I used to be friends with Patrick at Mercury. Sergio at Mercury knows all this stuff. I am not someone to tell you about the design. Brad says he licks his iPod to read it. I didn't lick my iPad. My iPod. I didn't lick it. I lifted it just because I'm blind in that range. I can see really close, and I can see 3 feet away. But here, it's because I have a terrible astigmatism. DB asks, should I pull the trigger on a Friedman Little Sister? You should play it first, because he's got a lot of good models, and they all sound different. Make sure that's the one that floats your boat. But there's no, other than the subjective choice of, hey, is that one voiced the way you want it to be? Does it do the thing you want? There's no downside to that. Hey, JC Rocket. I don't know anyone in mid-Missouri. Sorry, Missouri for my Missourian followers. Didn't mean to say Missouri. My wife is in Nevada, and nothing pisses off Nevadans more than calling them Nevadans. She's out in Nevada. I've heard great things about Rev Amps, New York City geology, but I have not had one on the bench or played one. But I look forward to having experience with the Rev Amp. I hope that my experience and thoughts of it match the opinions I've seen on the internet. And I used to know a little bit. Oh, he's gonna kill me now. Phenomenal guitarist. Used to play for Carrie Underwood, and he's a big Rev endorser. can't remember his name right now. I used to know him a little bit. He uses them. He's a phenomenal guitarist. I wish I could remember his name right now. It's going to kill me after this. But he's a phenomenal gypsy jazz guitarist. I was in his house, and he was playing an old Macaferri with a real tortoise shell pick, and it was just Django in the flesh, and that's his true love. But he makes his money playing rock and country because the world is a cruel, cruel place. I'm sure at this point someone's typing his name in the comments, and I'll slap my forehead as I scroll down to it. Ridiculous Wonk says, I have a Cerebella reverb combo with a noisy FX loop. I've already swapped the tube. Anything else I can do before taking it to a tech? Contact Sir. They're going to have really good customer support. They may have encountered that. They may have a fix, or take it to a good tech. And Sir can recommend people in your area, I'm sure. Clark Blacker asks, am I tired of making repair videos? It appears so. If so, I'll be sorry to lose your expertise. Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. I have not tired of making videos. In fact, I have just invested a lot of money to make videos from this point going forward even better. Hopefully the content will increase as well. I mean, I'm not going to be turning into Mr. Showman. This is not going to be the old razzle-dazzle. But, I'm going to make sure that you can really see the things that I'm trying to show you, that you can really hear the things I'm trying to demonstrate. So I'm going to try to use all this technology in service of giving good information about music and musical gear, not about me on YouTube, though I do look pretty. Nick Orr says, any thoughts on running a 2x12 wired in series versus parallel? Yeah. Parallel's almost always better if you can, because if one speaker dies, you still have sound. And you're getting a slightly better, well, that's arguable. I don't want to say something that because I'm trying to give an answer quickly without my notes. In general, say you have, well, there's a counter argument. You could say I've got a 40 watt amp and two 15 watt speakers. The first speaker dies. The second one no longer has signals, so the 15 watt speaker isn't getting the 40 watt amp. But at the same time, the 40 watt amp doesn't have a load. Whereas on the other side, you have a 40 watt amp and you got two 50 watt speakers. One speaker dies, the amp still has a load, your impedance is off, but the speaker can handle the full output by itself. So you really need to make the decision. But as far as sound goes, though, there are people who could hear the difference. They have never played guitar in their life because it's too loud. They're ensconced in mastering suites, and they don't want to hear your guitar amp because their ears cost more than your house does. The rest of the world will not hear the difference between series and parallel. It's really a matter of what speakers you can get, the impedance secondaries available on your amp, and then the considerations of safety. Do you want to protect the speaker, or do you want to protect the amp, or both? Hey, Brian Isaacs, thank you for that. $350, good price for Ignator 88 head. Love your content. Thank you. I have no experience with the Ignator 88, so I can't tell you whether that's a good price or not. Alan McDonald says, it's good to see your mug back online. It is rather lovely, isn't it? More of a cup, though. Thanks. Thanks, Gam Jam. Jordan E. asked the $1 million question. Anyone out there making quality clones of 60s Ampeg amps? Or maybe a pedal that could achieve the same? Greg Sage of the Wipers sold me on their tone. It's a tricky one. even Ampeg isn't quite getting it right. The new Heritage is pretty close in a lot of the ways to sounding like 69 or 78 SVT. I guess more of a 70 through 78 SVT. They're built differently, but they're built pretty well, and they sound right. But the trouble is, if you can see my video on one, I was really discouraged the way they implemented the standby switch. And Matt Field is fist pumping right now over standby. It brings the AC on the primary all the way to the front panel, running that close to something in the preamp circuitry. And so when the amp is on, you hear. Now apparently it's not on all of them, but it's on quite a few of them. And the only fix is either to move the standby switch to the rear of the amp where it should have been, where it was on the original SVTs, or to disconnect the two wires from that standby switch, solder them together, move them away from the circuit board, the preamp circuitry, and just don't use a standby switch, which is really arguably not necessary on that version of the amp, because what that standby does is send signal to a relay, and that relay won't even run until the tubes are warmed up enough. So that relay is kind of a built-in standby switch, which is, Matt's again fist pumping. That's the better way to do it. As far as other companies doing that, I've not seen any other companies making a tube amp that really does the SVT thing. And as to other alternatives, the Sans amp from the PSA and a few of their other models do pretty good SVT sounds for direct, and Geddy Lee certainly got his signature sound, which is not for everyone, with the RBI, I think. And then he had his, a couple of years ago, he had his Geddy Lee model. And those will also do traditional Sans amp sounds. And there's some really good sounding pedals that for emulating that as well, Sans amp and others. I think Sans amp has a pedal version of the rack mount ones that Geddy used. Honestly, unless you're being paid an awful lot to tour with an SVT, you've got to have two SVTs, which means you've got to have two roadies, and you've got to carry about $4,000 worth of spare tubes, and you'll probably need them. So if you're playing in U2, it's not a problem. If you're playing in Queen, it's not a problem. If you're playing in Queens, it's a big problem. It is truly a rock star thing to do, and unless you have that gold Amex and people to handle it for you, most engineers would be happier if you just had, here's my clean direct, here's my amp send direct, and I'm running the amp send out to a 1x12. You can put a mic on it and just get that air. Cuckoo Gear Kook says, any Nightmare Mesa repairs coming up on the channel? Man, I don't know. I've got 3 mesas here to finish, 4 mesas here to finish. I'm going to finish up that one that we're the Trimo Verb. We're making that a real amp. I've got to I got to get that one finished. That's just going to be a nightmare to get all the switching to work correctly. But one of the things I'm going to do is once I get to the point where I'm only accepting work in, not from the local music store, no more mesas, unless you just want to pay me out the ass. I just don't want to deal with mesas. They're terrible. Richard Nagamitsu asked what the frame print is behind you. It's a Calder, Calder, and it's original print signed by the artiste. He's better known for his mobiles. And, he's not really, I admire him. He's not really to my taste, but I don't own that many original artwork pieces from world-class famous artists. There's a Carol Clore in my family that I want, but I'll inherit it one day. And for those of you who don't know Carol Clore, C-L-O-A-R, he was a man, so 2 R's, 2 L's, Carol. Phenomenal artist, regional here, and I love his work. When we were in Europe, we travel. We choose where we're going to go based on the museums, not beaches. So we were at the Louvre, Centre Pompidou, Orangerie. We went everywhere. Musée d'Orsay, and then Vienna. We were at the Albertina, the Leopold, Upper Belvedere, the Kunsthistorische. I can't speak German well, but the Art History Museum, just phenomenal stuff. And there's so many pieces we'd love to have, and we've got a nice print of La Galou by Lautrec, which is over our fireplace, but it is a nice print. It is not original or anything. That's an original one, so that's one that gets featured here. I might move in here. You've seen in the background some other videos, Johnny Cash Hatch print show poster in the living room, but it looks really good where it is, so it's probably not going to make it in here. I do have one other. I have one other better piece of art. I've got a Walter Anderson lithograph, which is phenomenal. It is beautiful, and it's very large. It's over my piano, which you guys have not seen. Maybe someday we'll do a piano video, though it's really hard to retube them. Yeah, Brad, that dentist just fucked me up. I'm not bitter. I mean, the thing is, I'm one of the reasons I was so reticent to put my face on YouTube is I knew that to the rest of the country I looked some typical Southern hick with missing a tooth, even missing a tooth. It'd be like if I were British and my teeth were all like that. You just don't want to be that stereotype. I brush my teeth. I have, I take care of things. I'm a clean person. I even wear shoes in the winter, but between COVID and I had no income at the time. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, about my sister. It puts a tooth in perspective. JM says, hi, Lyle. Just wanted to say thank you for all the videos you've posted. I fixed the grounding scheme on my 68 Custom Twin. It was very involved, but you left me enough breadcrumbs to figure it out. Well, cool. I'm glad to help. Ike Stoddard asked about the ToneMaster Twin Reverb. I have not tried one. The only ToneMaster I've played was that Deluxe Reverb, the first version, in the Guitar Center in Johnson City, Tennessee, where my tooth didn't stand out too much. That was, I just set up an iPhone and it was clipping. It's not the best audio quality of my videos. It's one of the worst. And, I get people who find that video in isolation from knowing anything about my channel, and they just think I'm an idiot who doesn't know how to judge an amp, or that my noodling shows I don't play. When you're an amp tech, you're not here to do a concert. I want to know how an amp reacts to this and that, and this and that, and this and that, and this and that. So how does it do with dynamics? How does it do with really digging in? How does it do with really soft stuff? How does it do with double stops? How does it do with complex chords up and down the neck? How's the low E response? Stuff on the low string while I'm still playing upper stuff. So I'm not trying to play a concert on those. But people who find the video in isolation, they search for Deluxe Reverb ToneMaster, they find that video, they dismiss everything I say because they don't know who I am. They think I'm not able to play because I'm not playing real parts, and they don't like what I'm saying, and they don't know the context where I've played, probably a few hundred restored 60s and 70s Deluxe Reverbs at this point. I kind of know what the fuck I'm talking about on this, and I expected the ToneMaster to be much better than it was. And like I said in that, it was really nice as long as you're playing clean and soft, but as soon as you dig in and do any of the things that people who really play blues and rock and country love to do with a Deluxe Reverb, it just had a built-in cheap compressor. Just hit that wall, just could not go. I think I said it got small right when you wanted it to get big, and I stand behind that. That's one of the weird things about this channel. You know, I get people who see almost every video who know what I do and the range of stuff I worked on over the years. And, you know, I've got like 900 videos up. Someone will be searching for one amp, and they'll find my video saying that the AC10C1 sucks, because it sucks. It's stupid, and it's ripping you off. It's a bad amp, and they're preying on people without much money, and it pisses me off. And they don't like that I say it's bad, and they dismiss the whole thing. Meanwhile, if they were to Google my fucking name and Vox, you know, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be, do you know who I am? Might you have any grey poupon? But, you know, it's at the end of the day, yeah. There are people, if Friedman says, hey, this new Marshall sucks, and you take out of the picture that he sells amps himself, he's worked on the amps that people dream of, you know, or John Stewart. If, you know, people just would kill to be in the room with Eddie's 68. John Stewart's fixed it. You know, all the SIR 39 and 34 stuff. These are the guys who did that. They've had that in to retube it. And they know when an amp's good. They know when an amp's bad. I'm not saying I'm at their level. I'm actually taller than both of them. But, you know, some opinions are weightier than others. I'm not alone in that. Hey, gets the let out. Yeah, that is not a rough start to the year. That was 2020. This year has been fantastic. Except I threw my back out. But, you know, I do that every few years just to keep in practice. Rob Hunter's got an interesting one. His 89 Les Paul is Bill Lawrence HBL and HBR pickups 13.4K and 7.6K. The stock pots are 300K. Any thoughts on swapping in 500K pots, or is there a reason based on the actual pickups that were used? It will change the sound. You'll have more highs. You'll have more clarity. Whether you like that or not, I cannot tell you. I will say that the odds are the 300Ks were not a choice made to complement those pickups, but Gibson used to use an awful lot of 300K pots because they bought an awful lot of 300K pots. All they had were hammers, so everything was a nail. And they even used a lot of linear taper pots, which are absolutely horrible choices for volume pots. If it were mine, I would have a good tech, or you, put in very high quality 500K audio taper pots. I would recommend, of what's available these days, the Mojotone Vintage Taper 500K knurled shafts. They're made by CTS to the Mojotone spec. They have a really nice taper, a real nice feel, real nice resistance, the torque. As to whether you need the long or short or regular bushings, I don't know. It depends on what they were doing in 89. And then if you find it too bright, say it's too bright on the bridge pickup, but it's perfect on the neck, put a 1 meg in parallel across the pot from lug 1 to 1.3. You'll turn it into about a 330K pot. So 1 3-cent resistor will change it back to a 330K. You can always decrease the resistance / increase the load. You can't go the other way. You'd have a better quality pot than what Gibson was using in 1989. And then you could say, hey, 500K is too bright, 330K is not bright enough. Well, let me put a 2 meg across there. We're going to end up about 400K. Oh, that's magic. It's my secret. You know, resistors are cheap. Yeah, tone masters are a temporary thing. John GPM says, treated myself to my first truly nice amp, a Swart SDR. Swarts are really nice. Love it, but wonder if I should upgrade from the stock Mojotone BV30H to the recommended Creamback or Alnico Blue, or maybe a WGS offering. Thoughts? As I make weird sounds. Who's beeping me? I've got on Do Not Disturb. I don't know how my mother gets through my defenses. I'll text her after this. She's locked herself out of her bank again. She does this weekly. It's fun. She almost always does it on the weekend when the bank is closed, so we can't call anyone. Back to your question about speakers, things that I actually can fix and change for the better. The BVH30 is a pretty good speaker. Creamback is going to be a different response. It's going to have a little bit more lows, a little bit more upper mids. It's not going to be quite as sharp, but it's going to have a nice air to it. Alnico Blue is going to be kind of similar to the Creamback, only for the first week or so it's going to seem way too bright to you. And WGS has a range of great speakers. I would say you have a nice amp. It sounds good now. Play it for a while. Get to really know it. And then take it. Hey, find out what speakers and cabs your buddies have. If your buddy's got a Vox with blues, if your other buddy's got a Marshall with Creambacks, bring it over there with an extension cable and get a little female to female 1/4 inch adapter so you can put the adapter on the back of a combo amp where it would normally plug into its chassis, then run to your Swartz output, whatever you need to do, and then you can play it. But at that point, you're not just saying, hey, I'm comparing this brand new amp that I don't know through this speaker to my buddies, because they're also going to be in a different room. So don't just go to someone's house and plug into their cab. Play what you already know in their space, because the sound of that speaker is not just the sound of the speaker. It is the sound of the speaker in that space, in that room, with those reflective surfaces or that carpeting, X distance from a wall, X distance from a corner, et cetera, et cetera. So learn it before you start to change it. The BVH30 or BV30H is a fine choice. It may not be your long-term choice because that's all subjective, but it's not going to hinder you from getting great sounds. Thank you, John GPM. Bioprocess is a much more technically minded version of engineering than I do. You know, if I mess up dramatically, I electrocute myself. If John messes up dramatically, we're all in a John Crichton movie, Michael Crichton movie. Shit, messed up my joke. Michael Crichton movie. Bioprocess. I don't know what bioprocess is. It's either engineering stuff that's going to kill us all, or it's going to make plastic that degrades in landfills. So I'm hoping it's the latter. Michael Crichton. Dang it. Well, let's roll this back. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to fix this in post, right? I got all this shit set up. Sonny Silversmith says, I have a 79 Super Reverb. It blew a fuse, so I want to do a remove all tubes test. So is this a good first step to check? This is a great question. This is something, I've shown in a lot of my videos, but you've got to be like 15, 20 minutes into the video before you get to it. Not everyone finds this stuff. And this is the kind of thing that tells me what to make videos about going forward. So if I get an amp in, 79 Super Reverb comes in, has a blown fuse. The owner just stopped there and brought it to me. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the fuse out, put in, make sure it was the correct value. If it was a 500 milliamp and it should have been a 3 amp, but a 3 amp might have been fixed. I put in the correct value fuse and I hook it up to my current limiter and I power it on, and I can pretty much quickly tell. And there are other ways of doing it with voltage and current, whether this is short. If I did not have that ability, rather than just randomly feeding it fuses, I would pull the rectifier tube and the output tubes. I would open it up. I would look for any scorch or burned areas. I would sniff everything. I would power it on without rectifier or output tubes with the new fuse, ready to power it off. And it might cost you a $1 fuse. If it works fine with that, and you won't really know other than the power light will be on, you won't hear anything. I'm assuming you don't have a lot of measurement equipment. Then put in the rectifier tube. Power it on. Wait 20 minutes. If nothing happens in that 20 minutes, that rectifier tube doesn't start to arc, and tap it on a few times. Not hard, just enough to, if there's a physical failure in that tube, it'll go. If all that's fine, then put in the power tubes and odds are that's the point where it'll blow a fuse. In which case, you probably have one or more bad power tubes. Measure your screen resistors if you can, but that's usually the sequence. And most of the time, it's going to be the rectifier tube or the power tube. But sometimes it'll be something else, something completely unrelated. Most commonly a shorted filter cap, or in rare cases with Fenders, it could be a shorted reverb transformer. So if it's that, as soon as you power it on, you'll and there's B plus supplied after the rectifier. Anyway, I'm going on too long, but yeah, that would be the sequence that I would do that in. And if it blows, no matter what you do, take it to a tech. Mad Max says, "Hi Lyle." Hi Mad Max. Any cheerful comments on the Sir Badger 18? Well, you should be cheerful, Max. Then it's kind of cool with the power drive and gain knobs. I'm looking forward to getting to know how to tune those knob options. And the Badger 18 is great. And it was really nice. It doesn't have all that many knobs, so it doesn't take too long to figure out. It's a good amp. It does what it says on the tin. I don't have any knowledge of or experience with an amplified Nation Trim Deluxe. Sorry, DB. Edge of Eternity says, I have a Jet City 20 watt original model. It will red plate the power tube closest to the transformer. Is it worth having it serviced? I can't talk today. Is it worth having it serviced? Is it worth it having it serviced? I need to remember to do my voiceover. It's not a terrible amp if it doesn't have problems with the power switch rotating and shorting things out. It could just be a bad tube, could be a faulty component in there. I think it would be worth having it serviced as long as the tech says, hey, yeah, it's a Jet City. And they're going to say, yeah, I know it. I'm glad to look at it. Or it's going to be, I would negotiate maybe a $50 diagnostic fee. So if there's something major wrong with it, you will have committed to paying them $50, and usually on an amp like that, they'll take it up front. And the reason this happens is a Jet City. Say you bring me your Jet City for this description, and I open it up, and I clean all the cobwebs off, and I dust everything off, and then I take some measurements before I power it on. I'm like measuring the screen grid resistors, and I'm measuring this, and I'm measuring that, and I'm checking for conductivity, and I power it on, confirm that it's drawing too much current, remove the tubes, power it on, it's still drawing too much current. Okay, it's got a bigger problem than just tubes. I call you and say, hey, it's going to be at least $150, $200 to fix this. And you say, oh, it's not worth it. I only got it for $75. Never mind. There's no incentive for them to come back and get the amp from you and pay you for that time that you just spent doing the diagnostics. So an amp with an intrinsically low resale value, where I can't say, well, the guy left it here, I'll flip it on Craigslist, whatever. I wouldn't make my money back. So I would say, I'll be glad to look at your Jet City, but this is one of those cases where I'm going to ask for $50 up front to do the diagnosis. So that's fair to both people. And if either party has a problem with that, there's something else going on. And I've got lip smacking noises, but I can't stop drinking my coffee. Alan McDonald's with the Emo Phillips. Yep. I think my favorite Emo Phillips joke was, my mother always said there was one weirdo on every bus. I haven't seen him. I have not had a custom 68 twin reissue. I've got 2 of the Deluxes here, 3 of the Deluxes here, and I've had, I think, a Super, and I've had the new, what's it called? Well, they're calling a Pro Reverb. It's not, but I've not had the twin in yet. So, so that was a weird sound on the. Let's see here. David Mara says he's watched all the Blues Junior videos, and you still bought one. I hope you get it sorted out. My advice if you own a Blues Junior is get it working and sell it while it's working. I know that's not popular. Buddy with an H asks an interesting question. What's the difference in the Blues DeVille PI plate resistors 91K plus 9.1K versus the 82K in theory and practice? It's a voltage divider forcing one output to have less gain than the other versus just using 82 and 100. I think it was someone trying to be clever. It doesn't really do that much. Well, in theory, that tube will bias as if it has a plate resistor of 100.1K versus biasing as if it had a plate resistor of 82K. So it will be, the tube itself can drive a load differently, even though the gain that you're sending out to the next stage is kept more or less at the same place. I think, honestly, they're just trying to say, hey, this is different from every other Fender we've made, and this is kind of a dumbly thing to do. But it's in the way they implemented it, it's really not that useful. There are other ways to do split plates like that. And Friedman, again, I'm not going to give away his trade secrets, but he has a split plate resistor on the BE. So the same tube is sending more gain out when it's used as the first triode in the gain stage, but it has less gain when it's being used as the first triode for the clean channel. And that's a more real-world example of how to use a split plate resistor, where you can say, I'm going to tap this one off right at pin 6, and that one's going to have the full gain of, say, 330K resistor. And this one's going to be right here tapped off after 100K resistors. So this one's going to have a 220K. This one's going to have a 3. You can split it either way. It's just a way of basically treating those two resistors as making a voltage divider where you can tune the signal level going to the next stage. I don't think it's done particularly well or needfully in the Blues DeVille. Yeah, Jacob K. Guitar says an SM57 with windscreen is perfectly competitive with an SM7B. Yeah, it can be. What's the best way to put this? I was watching Jason Tong's video the other day. He had Friedman on, speaking of which, small world from Australia to LA, head first. And they were both using SM7Bs, which most podcast and voiceover channels on YouTube do use. And they are really good mics, and I've used them a lot, but they are about $400, and they need quite a bit more gain than a 57, and I already had the 57. And if you use good mic technique, which I have used at various points in this video, and sometimes I forget, and then it's all over the place. But in general, if I were focusing on doing voiceover for a video, it's all here. But the other thing is, not every mic is perfect for everyone. I'm using this without any filters. I'm using this without any real EQ. I think I've got the mids down a little bit, the bass flat, and the highs up just a little bit, and I've got like 301 compression. Nothing major. Everyone's voice is different. So, if you go back and you watch that video, Dave's kind of right here. He's a little more nasal. He's got that Midwest thing, and I'm not trying to imitate him, but Dave kind of talks up here. It's not a womanish voice, but it's a higher pitched voice. And Jace is up here, Jace is back of the nasal cavities. He's up there, mate. Pardon me, Brad. It takes me a week to live in an accent before I could do it. I used to do theater, so I've done various accents, and I've done them well. But it's not something you just put on like a pair of shoes, unless you're Robin Williams, who doesn't need shoes anymore. He would have laughed at that. But, so I don't talk up here where Dave I don't talk up here where Dave talks, and I don't talk up here where Jace talks. My natural range is down here. And then sometimes I go up here if I want to be audible over a telephone. I'll come up here for emphasis or whatever, but my natural thing is like an octave below those guys. I'm not quite ready to sing Old Man River for you guys, but, the SM7 to me is too, I don't need to pay for its presence peak. I would need the presence peak with an SM7, whereas 57 has that built in, and the foam just offsets a little bit. So this gives me where I need it, whereas it would be harsh and nasal on those guys. And I like the proximity effect that the 57 has, though I've lessened it by using the foam screen. If I were going and editing this in playback, I would shelve some more stuff under 50 hertz, maybe under 80 hertz, tune it a little bit more. But for everyone's needs, there's a different microphone. Sorry to go off on these tangents, but these are things I think about a lot. Anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying this $100 mic sounds really good when I pay attention to how I'm using it. And I have a lot of experience with the 57s. It was my preferred stage mic back when I was a singer, and that's when I learned the joys of windscreens because it kept you from getting electrocuted every other gig. Brian Pierce, if you want to use your AC30cc without the risk of blowing your rectifier tube, just leave the standby switch in play and just use the power switch at all times. Never touch the standby switch. It's not necessary, and all it will do is damage the GZ34. Hey Matt, you helped UTC with his 64 Vibrolux? Yeah, I like his channel. He has some amazing PAF comparison videos. And while PAF comparisons are done all the time, usually it's people talking about them or they're playing one or another. But he's doing like 8 or 9 different high-end PAFs in the same guitar, playing the same parts through the same amp, recorded at the same levels. And for those of you who've never made a YouTube video at all, let alone something that structured, but just the time to make the video, that's like a week's worth of work. That doesn't even factor that he's changing out all these PAFs in I think it's a Dave Grohl Gibson. It's a Pelham Blue 335 style, which is not a fun guitar to change pickups in, but he did it. And it's a real, and he did another series with other humbuckers and a Les Paul, because you're not going to do it with a 335 twice. But yeah, he's legit. UTC guitar. He's been on the chat once in a while. I don't remember his real name, but yeah, I like his stuff. The trouble is, at the end of that, you've come away thinking, well, all those PAFs sound good. They're a little bit different, but then I don't play like he does. What do I do? So then you think, I'll just make some extra thin spaghetti. Sorry, I got distracted by Gam Jam's dinner plans. Buddy with an H says, any recommendation for circuits to pair with current C12 Qs? I've got a small stash in the corner. I'm on top of my head, I don't remember what the C12 Q sounds like. I tend to like the P's better than the C's. But C10 Qs fit in a lot of things. Maybe a Tweed Vibrolux would be a good choice for those. Billy Wagner says, what are your thoughts on the Stokes and Paul C mods in a Princeton? That gets really in the weeds. And the Stokes mod is similar to what I independently came up with. And I say that because I was comparing notes with John about approaches to increasing headroom. And we do pretty much the same thing, though I also changed the values of the plate and cathode resistors to accommodate the swing at the higher plate voltage. The Paul C, I tried. That's introducing some positive feedback on the grid. I didn't care for that as much. I can see why it has its uses, and Dumble's done a lot of things like that. It can be tuned pretty well, but I don't think it's that necessary. I think without giving out all my personal little secrets, the Stokes, which you can find everywhere, is pretty damn good. And if you combine that with the suggestions that Merlin Blinko has on valvewizard.co.uk on cathodyne phase inverter improvements with decreasing the capacitor feeding it, decreasing the grid leak on that grid, and adding some series grid resistance. If you do those things that Merlin suggests and move the supply node for the phase inverter in the Princeton, you get really, really good results. Turns it more into a 22-watt twin to an extent. Oh, Brad says Tech21 trademark 60s power transformers seem to be dying suddenly and are now obsolete. Ooh, that's terrible, because when they work, they sound great, but I've not repaired any. I've not had one open on my bench. I've just played them, and I know they've been on the market for a while, so I was hoping really good stuff. Their pedals were horribly made, comically bad, but, Rob Hunter, Fave EL34 application is 82 JCM 800. I went into depth on this earlier in the chat, but TAD red bass EL34s are currently available ones. Wayne says, no, and thank you for that, Wayne. No rush on the red wine super reverb with G10s. I don't know that I have that amp here. That may be at the shop. No, it is here. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was one of the amps I got in like the day before I threw my back out. So yeah, I'm up and at 'em again, and I'm set up to get a bunch of work done, and I'm looking forward to your amp. And I'm sorry about that. I'll give you a call after this, Wayne. Sorry. Well, Chris Butler, yeah, the TC Electronic BAM 200 Class D heads, if they're built like some of the TC bass amps I've had in the last year or two, which also use the Class D ICE modules, I hope you enjoy them while they last, because anyway, Class D, I don't like the D. It can be done well. It just rarely is. Hopefully, your BAM 200s are an exception. Well, it's going to be better than the Mesa 5050, regardless of whether it works or not. I'm glad it's working for you, man. I just have been very unimpressed with the TE implementation of Class D in their bass amps. Thank you, Gregory Hill Sr. Thank you very much, sir. Gam Jam asks, do electrolytic caps dry out if you let your amp sit too long? Absolutely they do, and once they dry out, you cannot re-wet them. I don't want to get into the reforming caps debate anymore, because it should not be a debate. It's a rule of physics. It's like people still debating gravity. There are people who are just flat earthers out there, and it doesn't matter what I say. Doesn't matter if I were to unroll a dried up old cap right now and show you all the crumbly bits and how it can never magically be a good electrolyte again. They're going to continue to believe the earth is flat no matter what empirical I present. So I'm just going to waste my time. People can believe it or not. Exactly. The Peavey EL34s, Brad, I think are the same ones that TAD is using for the red bass. I think they're just sorting. I think they're just sorting the Peavey EL34s and calling the sorted ones red bass. All right, so we've been doing this is the end of the second hour. We're going to take another break, about 7 minutes or so, and then when I come back, I'm going to try to get through as many questions as possible. And while you do not have to donate to get your question answered, I'm going to prioritize those who did donate, because otherwise it's just a ripoff. And then I'll try to get through as many as possible. go another 30, 45 minutes maybe. So see you guys in a few minutes. And this time I'm going to make a note of when it is. That was better on the timing. A little bit late. Working on it. Funny little thing. These are little clamp adapters for some super clamps. And these let me attach the super clamps to a flat surface like my workbench as opposed to a round tube. And I could not find one the other day. I looked everywhere, and could not find the damn thing. So they're cheap. I ordered 4 more. They just arrived. 10 minutes after I placed the order, I found the one. So I don't actually need them yet, but next time I lose one, if I can remember where I put those, I'll have spares. Isn't that the way? All right, real quick, I'm going to make sure I've not missed any donations. Thank you, Gregory Hill. That's very nice. I want to make sure any paid questions get answered. Then I'm going to go back to where we are in sequence and do them in the order they came in. Whoa, I've got a lot of questions I've yet to get to. So let me try to do speed up my response and yak a little bit less unless something's really necessary. $120 each. That's not bad. You know, if the TEs die, Chris, you know, $120 each. Doubt the EC amps Clapton uses on tour are gutted and built by Dumble, but I bet they were gutted and rebuilt by someone. If they were gutted and rebuilt by Dumble, Clapton would not be able to go on tour because they'd still be at Dumble's shop. Yeah, early 90s Bassman reissue, the LTD's really good, and yeah, exactly, Matt. So even one that's in dire straits can be fixed, and then you can play dire straits on it. Can I recommend a bedroom amp for about $600? Sean Drisdell says. For $600, yeah, I would get a Princeton Reverb reissue, if you can find one used for that price, or an AC15 C1 reissue used. You can get either one. Probably easier to get the AC15 for about $600. And both of those, I have videos literally showing the Deluxe Reverb, not the Princeton, but the Princeton's even easier, and the AC15 at bedroom levels. Just keep the volume down. It sounds fantastic. The mic does not care. Once you adjust the level, the mic hears exactly a great sound, so you can record with it. Though the flip side of that is, you know, go get almost any digital modeler, which will have USB or headphone out if you need something more versatile than just a good, clean amp. Though with the custom class, the AC15 custom, it does have master volume, so you can get some gain out of it and just keep the master low. So any of those amps can be good. My bedroom amp, as I've shown in another video, is an acoustic guitar. Nola Rocks is playing some oranges and being very happy with them. That's good. All right. TTB fan wants to replace speakers in his Bandmaster Reverb converted to a 2x10 combo. Blues and rock, no high gain. Yeah, go, you know, either the ET10 or the G10C from Warehouse. Either one of those is going to smoke the reissued Jensens. If you want to make it sound like Stevie Ray's clean, go with the G10Cs. If you want to make it sound like Robin Ford's clean, go with the ET10s. Guitar Man 45. That's a Regal. It is a Regal DS1054Z or Z, depending on where you live, and it's really good. How am I finding the mod caps? Well, I've got them in a drawer over there, and I just open it up, and there they are. No, so far they're just fine. I've not had any failures with the MOD axials. I like them very much. See, Brad, you thought I had the S, but no, I've got the Z. I think the S has an extra feature that I don't have. I think it's got maybe a signal generator. Mine does not have. I've got a really nice signal generator in my iPad and my iPhone. I paid the full $10 and I can do sweeps. So I can do pink and white and brown noise, and maybe some other video will make brown noise and we'll get ads on my monetary restricted. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. Nicholas, sorry, nothing in the B52 is worth using. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. We all make mistakes. You know, it could be worse. I traded a 64 Deluxe Reverb in immaculate shape for a JC120 plus cash. So, as far as boneheaded mistakes go, mine's way up there. Yours is understandable, and you didn't lose a lot of money. And if it's still working for now, it's working for now, but, you know, they're not worth fixing. Thanks, Rick Dale. Tom Buharaz, I'm not going to read every part of every question because we won't get through them. But yeah, apparently there are some new Blues Juniors which are cathode biased, though they have not changed the model number. It's not like it's Blues Junior 5. They're still calling the Blues Junior 4, even though there are fixed bias Blues Junior 4s on the market. I have not had one of the cathode bias 1Ns yet, so I don't know where they've set the cathode bias. Knowing Fender, they bias the fixed bias as if it was cathode bias, so they probably have the cathode bias about 40%, because what are data sheets for to them? But, you know, maybe they're great. Hit the frickin' like, or we'll release the frickin' sharks. Thanks, Gam Jim. I appreciate that. I should probably talk about likes and subscribing and hit the bell and blah, blah, blah. But I figured this is not the only YouTube video you've ever seen, and you're tired of hearing about it, and you know how it works, and you'd probably do it if you thought about it. And if you're watching on your TV or whatever, it's hard to do that. But, you know, the likes and subscribes, I mean, everyone here who's watching live is a subscriber, and I thank you for that. But likes do help. I do appreciate it. I have not had Kevin Newsom. I've not had any of the new JVM combos in, as far as I know. It's hard to keep track of all the model numbers that they have. You have to remember that I'm not a Marshall authorized repair center or Fender, or I've been offered these things, and I've declined because I don't need to take a pay cut to then argue with someone in accounting about everything that I've itemized or whether what I've listed is really necessary. It's not a game I want to play. So I get amps after the warranty period is expired. So when you have a new amp, pardon me, when a new amp comes out, it may be 2 to 5 years, usually 1 to 2 years before I see one. So I don't get the new stuff in very often. I have no thoughts on Amplified Nation apps. Sorry. Do you think Fender, Buzz Crumhunger says, do you think Fender can make any profit with the custom shop amps division? Yeah, they're already making a profit. I don't know if they make a good amp, but they make a profit. They could, you know, they have got a custom shop for guitars where they make tons of profit, but the guitars are wildly varying in quality. The custom shop puts out some great stuff. I also have a buddy who's a guitar tech, and he had a very expensive custom shop Strat come in where all the screws and hardware on the treble side of the body were rusted, and none of the screws and hardware on the bass side were, because they'd used unseasoned wet wood to make half the body. So half the body was just waterlogged, and all the screws rusted out. I mean, literally were dissolving. And that's the custom shop. Nola Rock thinks I should take my shirt off and wear mirror glasses and kick back with the Spitzer fan. I think 6 years ago I could have done that and might have gotten some new subscribers who were there for other things in the app. But I had some health issues, and with those health issues came about 40 pounds. So I think the shirt's going to stay on for a good while. I hope to lose this again soon. I need to get my bike fixed. Yeah, Hot Trap occurred to me, but that's a lyric, not a title. So I was sticking to the titles there. And, man, I scrolled all the way down again. Let's see. Did not mean to scroll so fast. Where was I? All right, here we are. That was to Gooden. Good to see you, man. I think I'm now caught up to the first break I took over an hour ago. Gadarins, you don't want to lower the plate voltage on a Princeton reverb that much. You know, it's, and if you want to, you can just change the rectifier tube from a GZ34 to a 5Y3. You don't need to modify the amp other than set the bias. But most guys want the Princeton to have as much headroom as possible because it's only 12 watts. So turning it into a 10-watt amp is not going to be that useful for most people, and it does not break up that nicely unless other changes are done. So I don't think there's much point to it, but there's no real harm in trying. I use Pizvanes, Gary. I have found that it really depends on the vendor. I don't want to finger point, but some vendors are just shipping stuff out straight from the distributor, and you get what you get. But some vendors have sorted stuff, and they're better. In general, I would trust the vendor more than the brand, and that goes for any tube brand. Find a vendor that you work well with. I have not tried ChatGPT because it's either going to be utter nonsense or depressing. And that I would no longer be necessary. But I don't think a ChatGPT could really help with the logic thinking needed to do repairs because it's going to be drawing from the internet. And so it's going to be drawing from a wide pool of forums, which is not at all useful to problem solving. I don't mean this to be egotistical. Ignore everything before the but. But you know, there are times when an amp comes in and has a weird problem. It seems vaguely familiar, but there's a weird problem. And before I start measuring a bunch of stuff or trying stuff, I'll look up that problem on the internet. You know, like 63 Bassman buzz, whatever. A lot of times the results I find are things that I posted 10 years ago. You know, so it's like past me is being my own library. That's not because I'm uniquely brilliant, but I spent way too much time on the internet 10 years ago in all those forums. So there's good information on those forums. You know, John Suhr is on the gear page. Bless his heart. You know, it frustrates me to no end. I'll see guys I know who really are heavy hitters, express opinions, try to help people on those forums, and other forumites just shit all over them and don't know who they're talking to. Is this false equivalency of opinions? I've discussed it before, and it's not a good thing. I don't think that anyone used to tell John Suhr jack shit about how tubes work. What tweaks do I suggest for 59 Bassman reissue? I'm trying to remember if the 59 has the heaters going to the PCB like other reissues. If it's got the heaters going to the PCB like other reissues, move them directly to the octal sockets. Make sure they still have a artificial heater balance circuit with 100 ohm half watts. Beyond that, it's minor stuff. It's lead dress mostly. The 59 Bassman is a really good amp. There are things you can do to make it better, but as far as necessary, not really. Hey, Charles Willis. Yeah, I hear about the radio thing. It's just I don't think there's any money in radio. And I'm not sure if there's any money in this either, but, you know, this way I can play radio. I don't think I have a voice for modern FM because I'd have to listen to the music occasionally. You know, might hear little bits and bops of Doja Cat playing through my cans before I could shut it off, and I'd probably have to throw myself off a bridge. But yeah, I'd love to be back in the day. Welcome to Late Night Vibes. Here's some new one by The Pink Floyd. I just had some plosives there. The Pink Floyd, the Pink Floyd. There it is. Here's the new one from the Pink Floyd. Enjoy. That would have been fun. I wonder what this sounds like on playback. I'm just hearing what these hear. But yeah, I still need to work. I'm rebuilding my mic technique, which used to be quite good. It sounds better in my cans if I talk at the damn thing. I need to stay right off axis, about 45 degrees. Let most of the nasties fly through. And I'm hearing a little bit of mouth sound, so I probably need to talk back here, not up here. Yeah, like everything, it's a muscle. The more I do this, the better I'll get again. I used to be really good at this shit. Tips on soldering wires to the back of alpha pots. Tiro Kupilanian's ass. Kupilanian. Yeah, I don't solder the back of alpha pots. Most people who try to put a bus wire in an amp, if they're using alpha pots, the amp doesn't need a bus wire. A lot of times it'll be a fender circuit, and they have a big bus bar across everything instead of just doing it like Leo did it. Or you can just run to chassis instead of to the back of the pot. The pot shell itself will be connected to chassis for shielding, but alpha, you don't want to get in there and Dremel or sand away the back of all your alpha pots. There's no point to it. Most amps don't need to have anything soldered to the back of the shell. Steve Danby asked, why aren't you watching the Glastonbury Festival? Well, I wasn't invited. Thanks for rubbing that in, Steve. And man, do I miss my conversation with Patrick at Mercury, Barry Dixon says. Yeah, Patrick was a great guy. I would call him just to shoot the shit all the time. Sometimes I'd order Transformers too, but let's see. Sean Tubbs, yeah. Oh, Sean. Oh, yeah, Sean Tubbs. Phenomenal, really nice guy, phenomenal player. But what he really excels at, like I said, is gypsy jazz. So if you, I don't know, there's probably some stuff on the internet. I mean, he's probably played little places around Nashville. It might be on YouTube. Look for that. Yeah, Patrick passed away, I guess about 2 years ago, and it hit me hard. He was a good guy. Germino is not a Friedman. A Germino is a Germino. Germino is Greg Germino's amps, and they are all variations of various models at different points in Marshall's history. And it's not a criticism of Germino to say that he's making Marshalls, because Marshall hasn't made Marshalls in a long time. So if you want the sound of the 66, you want the sound of the 67, if you want the sound of the super bass, he's making that. And they're built like tanks, and they sound great. Hey, Pavlos, I have not had a Cornell UK amp in. I'd love to. Just not a lot of Cornells in the States in general, and those that are tend to be in LA and New York and Chicago and places. I've not had any here, but I'd be interested. Cornell and Cameron are both two amps I'd like to have on the bench. Sunday Mensa asked about my opinion on the short and long-term effects, pros and cons of using an attenuator on the tubes and circuit boards. Thanks in advance. That's a real big can of worms. I don't want to get into it too far, but all attenuators are not built the same. I'm sorry, my nose thing. My dry sinuses. Like a Marshall Power Break or a Schultz Power Soak. Those are going to kill something in the amp. Then you get the next tier up. I think the Weber's okay for most things. The THD can be really great. And then the next tier up, you're getting into things like the Serreactive Load and the Aux Box. And I think there's some other good ones. Fryette makes a good one. But I've not had much experience with them, and while I've seen an awful lot of people using the Aux Box and seemingly getting great results, I'm also aware that there is still a danger that the Aux Box could cause damage, but I have not had one on my bench, and I don't know what's inside it. Complicating that is that the fact the guys who have done a lot of research on this, say John Sear or Steve Fryette, let's put it nicely, they know what they're talking about, and at the end of the day, they tend to recommend their own products, unsurprisingly. But, I know John, and I know people who know Steve, and I have a high opinion of him. I think there's probably a good reason that they think that theirs are the way to go and are probably safer options. Once you get into this range, though, you're paying quite a bit. So given that in Memphis, Tennessee, not a lot of people are running a lot of attenuators, or if they get one, it's just a little Weber thing, or maybe an older THD that's floating around. I have not really gone down that rabbit hole. I would contact Friedman or some of the other LA guys who are doing this a lot more often, because they're going to have a much fresher, more informed take than I do. I know that enough that if I had a client who needed that, I would call John and I would call Dave and say, hey guys, what do you recommend? Because one of the most important things that I can do in my job is serve the amp's owner, serve the client, not try to promote myself. If I don't know, I need to say, I do not know, but I will find out for you and implement it. I'm not here to pretend to be the great and mighty Oz. I'm here to find out who is behind the curtain and call them. Hey Rory, chokes in 60s Fender amps almost never need to be replaced. They need to be replaced if they're arcing, or if there's weird intermodulation distortion, or if you just don't have any voltage going through. And if you change the choke and you use the suitable model from a reputable manufacturer, you will not hear any difference. Yeah, Matt, I prefer parallel when possible. I'm not going to get in the Eric Johnson hearing thing. I respect him, but he get many magical qualities and hearing abilities are ascribed to him, which seem odd to describe to a guy in his 60s who spent the last 40 years playing in front of Marshall stacks. And I think he would chuckle if he heard that. So if that comes back to you, Mr. Johnson, I have nothing but respect for you. I think you're a tremendous player, and that you focus on all the details. But I think you would also agree that everything on the internet is blown way out of proportion. Well, see, JD says Andy Fuchs is putting out a Class D bass amp. He is with the SVT preamp. I have not heard it yet, so I cannot offer an opinion on that other than Andy knows what he's doing, and not all Class D amps are built the same. Companies make what you ask them to make. So if you go to China and say, make the cheapest possible thing that can cost no more than $20 per unit, they will make that, and you will get a truly crappy thing. If you go to China and say, make an iPhone, it's not a crappy thing. This is extraordinarily well made, because the manufacturer or the parent company chose to have it done correctly in that situation. And so Class D can be done well. Barefaced Audio, don't know the guys or the video. Audio memory is short. So speaker sound changes with series parallel. I could see that being more or less real depending on whether a voice coil, because the signal's got to go through the voice coil one speaker before it gets to the next one. If the voice coil is adding coloration, from one speaker, it's going to add that coloration in addition to the second speaker's voice coil coloration. So I could see that. Maybe it's some comb filtering. Maybe it's some, just slight disparity left to right. But I think that would also just be possibly within the margin of difference between two speakers, whether they're in series or parallel. So I think you could probably measure differences and maybe even hear subtle differences. I don't think it really matters that much. If you try one and you like it better, then that's the right one for you. Parallel in general is safer, unless you're trying to use lower power speakers with a higher power amp like an old AC30. The Red Guitar says, I'm a roadie, and what you just said about taking an SVT on the road is 100% true. Let's see. I just spilled Diet Dr. Pepper on my shirt. Let's see here. Jeff Mizet. Hey, Jeff. He's a little bit late to the game. Asked me what I think of the Soldanos and Suramps and the hand-wired 64 Deluxe. At the beginning of this video, I came down hard against the hand-wired 64 Deluxe. Go back to the beginning of the video. You'll see that. The Soldanos, the ones actually made by Mic, are great. I'm not sure about the new ones made by BAD, but the old school big Soldanos are fantastic, and Suras are fantastic. And the new BAD small factor SLOs may be great. I have not had one, I haven't heard one, let alone looked inside it. And by heard one, I mean in real life, me playing a guitar through it. I don't care about YouTube. I could take any guitar that's basically in tune and plug into any amp that makes a sound that isn't abjectly horrible, and then run it through my computer and make it sound like God on the other end. That's why when I do mic'd amp videos on here, it's an SM57. I show where it is on the speaker. It goes straight in the computer. I adjust the level, so if I have a clean part and a dirty part, the dirty part's not 10 times louder than the clean part. So I'll adjust the level and playback for you to listen to. That's it. I don't do any trickery because it is a slippery slope. So I form opinions on amp sounds based on me playing the amp or hearing a good player play the amp in a room. Jesse Morgado, it's always better with any of the Fender reissue series, get the 65, not the 68. The 65 is always going to be the better sounding amp than the 68. Jeff Mansfield, I enjoy both Carol Clore and Carol Spinney. Pavlos says that you could always get a tooth implant. I tried. They had to do the bone graft before they could do the steel post, because the post has to go into bone. And they gave me a bone graft, and then they put the steel insert in, and it both fell out, which hurt, because they had to go back and get all the failed graft out. I was pretty agonized by the whole process. It's really done a number on my self-esteem. But at some point, you just have to say, what the fuck, man? I look like I look, and you should have seen the other guy. Thanks, Alan, about the I assume the Deluxe Reverb thing. The Tone Master thing. Adios, Paradiso. Vermingagraina, Grainia. I apologize. I try to pronounce everyone's name correctly. That one was just, setting me up to fail. It's okay. I can barely say Lyle. When I was a kid, I couldn't say L's. So, thanks, Mom. But, yeah. Pagadisio. Verminga Grainia. I have to have Google do that one so I could practice it. Sorry, man. I mean that respectfully. I love different languages and different names because it challenges me to be more flexible as a speaker and as a brain floating around in the stupid human suit. This is not a cultural bias thing. This is being awareness of my own limitations. I've not tried the Super Cub 15H, Laney. Sorry, Gam Jam. You might have just bought that 74 Super Bass, Brad. Very cool. I've got some ideas for you on that if you need them. Axe Monkey, if you got a 2000 Laney Ironheart that sounds like crap, sell it. Give it to someone you don't like. Whatever, it's not worth putting money into those. Yeah, I think that the Katana and the Catalyst make more sense to me than the Tone Masters. You also get more than one sound. I've not tried the cream, Nola, just the cream back. I have not checked out any Jet City hand-wired amps. I would not expect much. Hey, Steve Moore, I'm doing well. Bambule, good night. Sorry, I know that's late for some places in Europe. Is there a huge delay in the streaming? A 4-second delay, according to my screen. There's a huge delay between someone asking a question and me answering the question because I'm answering the questions ahead of them. Yeah, Brad, Australian accents are tough. I can do one, but it takes more than a week of working with a vocal coach if I'm doing a play before it gets passable. And there every time I reach for it. Especially since I was trying to also do up in Jace's register, so it's a register change as well as a sudden approximation of an Australian accent. All right, we're talking now about the PAF swaps. Hey, old guy. All right, I think I'm caught up to the second intermission. All right, see you again, Jam. Drink a coffee, lose a coffee. I don't know what you mean there. I went too far. All right, let's see. Trying to get everyone go to Brad's Dry July Fund if you want to make a useful donation. He's raising cancer for. He's not raising. Oh yeah, he's raising cancer, guys. This is going to revolutionize everything. He's raising funds to fight cancer in Australia. It's a really good cause. Yeah, and you guys watch Kids in the Hall. I'm sorry I caused all that bad cancer. I'm not a very good doctor. These guys one time, they had a coyote. That's not the one. The real valuable kind? Let's see. The best Princeton 12 clone. I don't know what the best Princeton 12 clone is. I could say what it isn't, but then I'm back in the nasty mindset. For most players, the Princeton reissue 65 is fine. Upgrade the 10-inch, or you can get a 12-inch baffle from Mojotone for like $60-70 and put any 12-inch speaker in it you want. Hand wiring doesn't make that huge a difference in those things. Remember that a good quality hand-wired Princeton, built like Fender actually built in the 60s, it should be about a $2,800 amp. That said, I've not tried Milkman, so I've heard good things, but I don't know. If you want to build your first amp kit, Charles Willis, even if you've been building pedals, that's good. I would say start with a Tweed champ. Build a Tweed champ. If it works, you'll always have a use for it. And then the Deluxe after that. Robert, hello. I don't... I'm not sure if he's in Pittsburgh. I think he's in Philly. Rob... Oh, I can't remember his name. Rob. I'm sorry. I've got a guy I know in the Philly area, but I also know that Philly's a long way from Pittsburgh, so I don't know. Sorry. Well, Brett, I can answer that for you. Do not send me any Mesa strategies or silent classes. My doors aren't that difficult to stay open. I don't need anything that heavy. Yeah, Brad, it's people telling John or Bruce or Roland or Robert they don't know what they're talking about. Yeah, it happens all the time on the internet, and it's just so sad. Do we have religion? I guess I had some bots that Brad nuked. Well, so the bots have been getting in even though it's subs only. And I set the sub to minimum of 1 day, which was less than 24 hours. So when I created this thing, it was like 4 or 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon. And I knew it was starting at 1, so it was less than 24 hours. They'd have to be subscribed for more than 1 day, so you'd think that they wouldn't be able to join. Anyway, I'll figure there's other ways to do it. Thank you, Greg. Good to see you, man. Yeah, but yeah, any bots, nuke them for me, man. I appreciate them, especially religious bots. I hate creepy robots, religious robots. Yeah, Brian Strasser, Brad, gotcha. You need a lot of space between a transformer and power transformers and the reverb tank. It's very rare for a head to sound good with reverb. It can be done, but you end up with a tall cabinet. In general, with the Fender, if you absolutely need the portability, given how clean the amp usually is run, just use a reverb pedal. Jacques Wortman, I don't like the FSR Princeton Reverb with the 12-inch Cannabis Rex for 2 reasons. First of all, it's Tweed. Princeton Reverb is not a Tweed amp. Princeton Reverb came out in 1964 and 65. Tweed ended in 60. So it's an anachronism. I think it's an ugly anachronism with the faceplate and the controls. And I think the Cannabis Rex is only designed to offset the built-in 47 picofarad bright cap and a Deluxe Reverb. Other than that, it's a pretty dark-sounding speaker. If you remove the cap, you have a better-sounding amp. Then you've got too dark a speaker. I think the C-Rex, it's got cannabis in the name, and so people really like it on forums. It sounds cool. I don't think it's a great sounding speaker. Eminence makes a lot of great sounding speakers. I don't think that's one of them. I think it just offsets the built-in bright cap. And the Princeton does not have a bright cap, so if you have a 64 Deluxe Reverb, Josh, maintain it, don't change it. Brad, you hit your target already. Cool. Thanks, Travis. Thanks for helping. So he's hit his target on the fundraiser, but if any of you guys want to push him over his target, I'll be doing that after this. Yeah, Rob D'Antonio. Thanks, Brad. Rob D'Antonio is a fantastic amp tech. He's pretty close to Philly, and then Brad's got his web address there, ampshopnj.com. Yeah, Rob does great work, and I'm sorry that if you see this, Rob, I'm sorry I spaced on your last name. I haven't been on our group in a while because I've been busy, and there's so many names to remember. All right, I'm down to the last two, so I'm going to answer these two, then we're going to sign off, and we'll have been going just about 3 hours. The blend real quick, you just asked. Every chat I've been asked about books and resources, and I've looked at the last one. I went in pretty good depth on that, or the one before that. Robert from Pittsburgh, looking for tech to tune up his vintage Vibrochamp. I think it's the same Robert from earlier. Yeah, Rob D'Antonio's in Philly, but I don't know anyone in Pittsburgh. And Jim Deacon, which is the last question we're going to that we're going to address before we sign out. He's curious as to the theory behind pilot lights. One of my lights burns out pilot lights for some reason. Thanks. A pilot light is just a filament with AC on one side and the other path of AC on the other side. Typically, now that can be 6.3 volt. That can be 120 volts. Different manufacturers implement pilot lights differently. You can do it off the heater secondary, 6.3 volts. You can do it off the primary, 120 volts, 240 volts, depending on the country. If you have a number 47 6.3 volt bulb and you put it in an amp that's going to have higher voltage, it will die. Typically, the amps that have the higher voltage bulbs are using neons, like a Marshall, so you're not going to be changing bulbs. But most amps use a number 47 light bulb, and it's just, pardon me, a miniature version of what you would find in an old light socket. If you're burning out tubes a lot, you might have just have a bad run of bulbs, because they're light bulbs, they die. I can't tell you beyond that, because that would be weird. They're just little light bulbs with AC. They work the same way any incandescent bulb works. I'd have to have your amp on the bench to go beyond that. But for loop on the Marshall reaches is okay. Sneaking in a few more. All right. Yeah, you can buy LED number 47s, and that might be worth your time, Michael Smith says. I think that might be a good suggestion. But that would be a weird problem to have, unless you had a lamp that, for whatever reason, was forcing it to pull too much current. But I just can't imagine that. Anyway, we're going to sign this one out, guys. It's been 3 hours. Thank you for joining me on this Saturday. I've got to go back and listen to it and see how the sound was, because I keep hearing weird little sounds, but I'm hearing an exaggerated thing because I'm right here. So y'all have a good weekend, and look for some videos coming up very soon. Where's my little thing? Here we go.